All right, so we have another podcast episode, and we've got Rich on, who runs a call center. It's a partner of ours. Rich, say hello.
Hi, great to virtually meet everybody.
Yeah. So, we've been working together over the last couple of months, and you helping us with sales. From a perspective of the client side, it's helping the clients, especially doctors and practices, with unbundling the customer journey once the lead comes in. Because a lot of the problems we have with the business of this medical, let's just call it cat chase, or cat herding, is that patients, we send lots of leads to clients, and patients are difficult to bring through the journey sometimes, because obviously front desks and people who are working the front end of a medical practice, whether it's a wellness clinic, an aesthetics shop, or plastic surgery, there's a lot of things that go on during the day. And when you start running, traffic to a front end of a business, they might not be necessarily ready to handle it, because it's not just one or two leads. We're sending hundreds of leads on a monthly basis sometimes. But most of them are getting a good solid, 5 to 10 leads coming in a day. And now, how do you manage that, right? And so I think, Rich, we've come to the conclusion that I think the biggest bottleneck in all the practices that we work with is the pure mechanics trying to set appointments and not waste time between sort of working with the people who are serious, meaning patients that are serious, and the patients who are not serious, right? So I think maybe talk a little bit about why it's important to have the in-between piece here, right? Because that's what you've really concentrated on with working with us, with our clients on.
Sure. So, I mean, there's many facets to the question, or many aspects, and everything is, to me, is about relationship building. So when people are calling in to make an appointment, whether it's for Botox or it's for higher end laser cosmetic treatment, they want to be they want to feel like they're appreciated. They want to feel that their time is being valued. And we can really look at our leads in a couple different buckets. Number one, there are the leads that come in via web form. So somebody submitting the lead and is expecting a phone call or somebody to reach out to them. And to take a step back, we really need to be prepared for this. So, lead generation is fantastic, but if we're losing, these leads or losing these potential customers due to the practice not having any kind of process set up, that's going to cause a ripple effect through, are we getting good leads? Are we not getting good leads? Or is this customer good, our avatar, or is it not? So the first part is, let's talk about the process. If you're going to be receiving leads, you need to be prepared to receive those leads. If you're getting web forms, you need to have somebody who is responsible for handling those incoming leads. And then what is the game plan once the lead comes in? The best case scenario is you're getting in touch with them right away. Somebody just submitted a lead, said, I'm interested in a service. And if you can call them back immediately, and I understand that your front desk, whoever's answering the calls, has other things to do, but what's more important than actually capturing a patient? So I consider a lead to be hot as far as soon as it comes in, we want to get in touch with those people as soon as possible. And understanding that the longer you don't get in touch with them, the least they become less and less excited. And the other thing you have to understand is that if they don't hear from you, they're going to go search for other sources. So who's the next competitor down the street, or who's somebody else in my area? Now, if people don't know you, this is your first introduction to a brand new potential patient. If they already know you, it should be clockwork. They've had a great experience with you. They've done something in the past. They trust you. They're ready to come and re-give you their business. But for that first time person who has never been introduced to your practice, it's all about the great impression. It's the wow factor, because don't forget, again, you're one of many in your area. People have choices. What is going to make you stand out from other people? And I always say, if you could look at your practice, if you were standing on the outside, look at your practice, then put another practice on the left, another practice on the right, and they all look exactly the same. what's going to be a differentiator between somebody picking your practice to have their treatments done versus another practice? And I believe it's the wow factor. It's the, we answer our phones and we call back quickly. If somebody submits questions or wants to be a part and take advantage of a treatment, again, to me, it's a speed issue. It's an organization issue as well. Somebody says they're interested in the treatment, you do call them back quickly, but they don't answer. So what's the next step in the process? The next step in the process is obviously having some type of follow-up process in place. Now, I do truly believe that your front desk staff or anybody who is actually handling leads in any way, shape, or form definitely needs to have some kind of phone script or just a script of what they're going to write back, or when they call, what they're going to say. Just to call back and say, well, hi, you reached out to us. It's, we're so happy you reached out to us. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. Also realizing that, when you're bringing a new patient to the practice who came off, some type of lead generation program, you're bringing their friends along with them. You're bringing, goodwill. So don't forget, you think, well, we missed a lead or we didn't call them back. Well, you potentially just didn't call back 15 people, because if people like you and you give them a great service, you make them look amazing, feel amazing, they're going to refer everyone to you. So don't think of everyone as like a $250 transaction, or, think of everyone as a new little business unit, because marketing gets to X amount of people, but it's that whole network of people that you are trying to reach in as well, by giving the initial person who you let in the front door the opportunity now to experience what you have to offer, finding a solution to whatever their issue is. I want to look better. I don't want as many wrinkles. I want to reduce some fat, and then spreading the good word. So I really started off, and I just want to take another second to talk about when people call to make appointments or ask questions. When somebody calls you, to me, that's the hottest lead. They've actively engaged, picked up the phone and said, I'm really interested, and I'm interested right now. So you can't have people fumbling around the phone saying, well, choking over the words. They don't know what to say. It's always thanking them for calling, getting their information in case you get disconnected, and having, an email address as well. So let's say the call doesn't, work out. They don't schedule. That doesn't mean that they said no forever. It just means they said no for the moment. So whatever your process is, as far as, emails or SMS or phone calls, which I do believe everybody loves that human touch, you have to be prepared for every situation. So every lead that falls through the crack because somebody didn't answer the phone right, somebody didn't answer the phone at all, or nobody even bothered to get back in touch, with this potential client, could set off a cataclysmic, cascade of bad things that are going to happen. So have a game plan, have it in writing, have people who are responsible for that game plan, and then finally holding them accountable. You should know how many leads you have, and how many of those were engaged, and what's that looking like going into the next day.
Right. Yeah. So summary is sort of, it's the time clicking factor. Each second that goes by and that lead gets colder, we know that the chances of the conversion go down. And what's critically important is that we have had so many conversations with folks, because the leads come through Facebook and Instagram and Google and whatnot, and they're coming in, they're coming into pipelines. We obviously have a very strong system that supports all the automations. And all the automations in the world don't make a difference when a patient is not going to return a call, of text, or SMS they need to be physically engaged with. And even to a point where I think your second point, which is critical to the summary here, which is this scripting strategy, and what do you say to them when you call them back, as appropriate as you can be, to thinking about looking at this as an operational flow. These aspects of call time back, scripting, create a difference between some practices that are significantly higher in revenue and profitability versus those who struggle. And if you are struggling right now, you probably are aware of these things that you should be fixing. And a lot of it has to do with mechanics. But the good thing is, it's just like anything else, you can outsource this. This is why Rich is here and why we're talking, because we've had to think about other things besides just running these mechanical operations of automation strategies to bring people through calendaring functions right off of leads from online ads. We've also had to think about how do we automate appointment setting in a physical world. And so that's where Rich comes in. And we've been talking about that this is a epidemic with all of our clients. With most of them, we see not necessarily laziness towards approaching the callbacks for leads that have not booked themselves directly from a calendar function online, but I think we see the underbelly of the industry, which is that typically there's a physician or doctor or a group of doctors. There's a second layer of management that's managing the practice. And then there's a third layer of workers who are typically the people who work the front desk and do other tasks. Uh, and that third layer, to me, has always been the gigantic bottleneck that we see, because it's not necessarily a occupational strength to have a person who's at the third layer be a killer salesperson that can close left and right. That does happen from occasion, but think about the fact of the people who are literally taking in the edible assets of a business. The people who are literally on the front lines are usually the youngest, the most unexperienced, and the weakest link in the business, and you're letting them become potentially the bottleneck for a really good, efficient running practice. Now, that doesn't happen in all cases, but we tend to see this as an epidemic because of the fact that most of the hiring process for, let's just say, higher-ended people is done at the management level and not at the front end of the desk layer. And so that's where, Rich, I think you've really helped us with helping support for literally, a third of the cost to hire somebody in the first place to run an entire sales department for a company. And talk a little bit about your effectiveness and how you feel from all those things we talked about, which is the time clock clicking as the lead comes through, the scripting, the skill sets that are involved.
Yeah, again, it's your business is every business has a sales engine, and the sales is really what makes your engine tick. And of course, on the operational side, you want to have effective medical team that's able to get great results, and obviously we want to treat everyone great. And sometimes it's not so obvious, but your front line is the gatekeeper and welcomer to your business. So if you're hiring somebody and you're not training them what to say, because you say, oh, I have so many things to train them on. I have to train them on scheduling. I have to train them on this, and I have to train them on that. Well, if you don't bring in new patients, there's nobody to schedule. If you don't use your tools, then I've been we do call center services for many medical practices, and when I go into their systems and when we get started, and Matt, with profit engines, you have an amazing system. I mean, everything's just sitting there for you. What happened, email automation, SMS automation, and notes. I would say that when I go into a practice, I'll say 90% of the leads don't have any notes. Nobody annotated them. Nobody knows where you are with the lead. And then we just say, well, it's just a lead. But if that's that's kind of like an indicator of how all your leads are kind of being handled. Lead management is, as important, or maybe even more important sometimes, to lead generation. I mean, obviously you want to get a lead, but then you'll say, well, it wasn't a good lead because they didn't answer the phone. Well, it's only not a good lead if it's totally not your demographic. Dead broke, wrong part of town, whatever it might be that would disqualify somebody from your services. So, and not asking any questions and then listening to the answer is, another thing that's going to make your practice ineffective. So when people say to me, "Hey, I got bad leads," I'm saying, "Well, what makes a bad lead?" "Well, I was talking to him and they hung up." "Well, did you call them back? Maybe they just got disconnected." And you have to give people the benefit of the doubt and understand that, we're in a texting, emailing society. When you're speaking to people on the phone or even sending them an SMS, you want to reply. I mean, people want to be replied to. And as far as we're concerned, I mean, all the things I spoke about earlier is about having processes in place. Our sales consultants or wellness consultants, we're there to make sure that every lead, no leads fall through the cracks. And for every treatment you have, we have a phone script. For every lead that comes in, we have a process on how many times the average person needs to be followed up with, which, by the way, historically is about 12 times. Somebody needs to get 12 messages from you, combination of SMS, email, and voice calls, until they make a decision. Now, maybe not for some of your lower end or lower revenue generating services. But don't forget, you're trying to bring people, when you bring somebody in for a lower end service, the whole, crux of what you're trying to do is obviously give them results and then upsell them to higher services. So that Botox patient may very well become the body sculpting patient who's spending $3,000, and then I know Matt shows you, hey, here's your average cost of acquisition, here's after they've done a full treatment what the acquisition was. You really need to think about those things. If you're looking for a one-time customer, one-time customers are pretty easy to get. If you're looking for long-term loyal customers, it's really going to be built on the processes that you have in your practice. So where we take the heavy lifting away from you is we schedule your appointments for you. We actually follow up with people that have not been contacted or need to be contacted through various means. We make sure that you have the best chance of converting a prospect into a patient. And it all comes down to conversion. So you could be overwhelmed and say, hey, we're getting too many leads. Well, if you had a process in place where you can handle too many leads, it's a good problem to have, then you're just going to see your revenues go up. So our team is very professional, well trained in every medical treatment as to what the questions are to ask, or just how to schedule and ask basic questions to get somebody through the door. With some of the higher end treatments and procedures, we like to take money up front. We like people to make a commitment, to put a little skin in the game, because I know that one of the biggest problems that a lot of practices have are no-shows. Like,
Correct.
oh, I schedule all these appointments and 60% of the people aren't coming in. Well, what's their incentive to come in other than getting, they're going to get the treatment? They might have made an appointment with 2 other places as well, and whatever they feel like going to on that day. So it's, what do you do once you schedule that appointment? What's going to really get people through the door? One thing that works really well is charging them even a nominal fee, and then like an appointment setting fee. And then you can just, if you have $100 treatment, you take a $25 deposit, you just credit it to their account. They come in, they do the treatment, they pay the other $75. One thing I can guarantee you, if somebody pays up front, they're coming in. Your show ratio will be 99%, not 30%. So
And
those are
that's a
really
very,
things to think about.
I was gonna say, I just want to interrupt you for a second. It's a really important thing to think about that piece alone, as I know that there's some trepidation from a lot of the front desk people to ask for credit cards, right? To ask for payment information over the phone, to ask for, and we have this all integrated into profit engines, and people need to do it electronically, so you can send them a link, blah blah blah. But I think it's a stigma in the industry, in medical, for asking people for money up front, right? There is a somewhat of a taboo, even for a lot of medicals. And again, this relates back to, I think, medical training, the oath of, how the whole process is worked, is that, you should be on the other side of the coin. You should be really not looking at sales as a way to get business. You should always be so above board that you shouldn't need sales. There's been a long history in the medical profession, although that's changed dramatically as we've gotten into paid cash services. And obviously, we're doing even ED with you, and services that are typically not insurance based, and all the things that really are potentially high revenue services that need to be thought about from a time conscious level with what does it take when someone goes to book you for your time and they don't show? What is that value? What's that money worth that would have been uh, put into your register if that person showed up? And I think that whole process of understanding that not taking the credit card, or if someone has a conflict or they say, oh, I don't want to give my credit card over the phone, there's a lot of variables there. And I think you look at that, and from a front desk perspective, it does get kind of naughty. And I don't mean naughty as in naughty, but Knotty, which is that it can get tangled up and knotted because there's a lot of, you have to be prepared for what do you say? And the person says, no, I don't want to give you my credit card. Okay, well, there's these built-in scripting strategies, and the sales strategy is now, that's where things like what you're doing, Rich, are so incredibly important, because now you've already got the rebuttals times a million because you've already had a million rebuttals. And now you can figure out, is that customer a tire kicker? Is that customer for real? Do we have just somebody who's just playing games and just wants to figure out maybe pricing information, and we're wasting the doctor's time, the front desk's time, the practice's time? So these things need to be thought about if you are going to do, especially an aggressive ad campaign where you're potentially spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to bring in all these patient leads. And those patient leads better be of the value what you expect to get out of that spend. We have a lot of clients who spend a lot of money. I'm talking, if you looked at our entire deck, there's millions and millions of dollars being spent on Facebook and Instagram and Google on an annual basis to bring through these patients. And you look at the percentage points, and the ones who have done the best with us consistently have been the ones who outsource their call center strategy, because the value of having a resource that is, one, shows up every day because they're paid to show up, and they're paid because they're paid on a different wavelength, let's just put it that way, than a front desk person. And then two, they're skilled at sales, and they're doing this times 100 every day. So imagine if your front end desk person, or your salesperson on your team, or your administration, who's whatever you're doing to close appointments or to call back people to get them back in. Imagine if they were doing this hundreds of times a day instead of maybe what your practice is. So you have to think of the wavelength that's here. There's so much more repeating patterns that have been figured out, that almost like a wrestler, the wrestling tie downs are already built there. So, and again, this having call centers is not for everyone. And I'll be the first one to admit, it is a surprisingly small amount of people on our deck of clients that we have that have call centers. But the ones who do typically have the best profitability, because they are able to capture more out of what is being brought to them from an ad perspective. So their acquisition costs come down and their profitability comes up. So you have to think about this. Again, I think, Rich, maybe we could wrap this up, because this probably could go on for many, many sessions. And I think we'll have to do another follow-up on this, on maybe some objective handling and things that would be more in the nitty-gritty. But I think I wanted to just bring this one last point up, is that, and again, this is not to toot our own horn, but talk about maybe even your experience with doing ED, and how many people are willing to bring and pay up front, because people, I think, also don't realize that the major metropolitan areas are full of well-honed, well-oiled machines, wellness, med spas, and centers that have call centers that take the money all up front and just drop the people in, like parachute them in, already prepaid, walking in the door. And these individual locations, especially if it's a franchise, who are getting fed these prepaid customers, are literally just ludicrous rich on having all the guts of the operation of patient management done before they even get the door. And I think that's the thing that gets me, is how much effort is brought through the journey of the patient, whether they come from an ad or they come from website or email or wherever they come from, all the effort to get them through the door, and then they don't buy when they come in, right?
Or
And
they
I
don't
think,
come in.
or they don't show up, right? So I think, those things being taken care of up front. Tell me a little bit about your success in the prepaid world, because I think this is the last thing we'll touch upon, and then we'll call it. We'll have another session, but I really am fascinated by just the amount of revenue that you've done historically, just in your, travels.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's been actually the success of our company has been the ability of our team to be able to get people to prepay before they come in. And, it's more of a mindset than anything else, because if you're saying, well, I can't ask people, it's just because you're not confident that you can ask people. When you may, it has, we make it so matter of fact that it's just part of it. So great. So we agreed that, you want to move forward with this. Today we're going to collect X amount of dollars. Which credit card did you want to use today? Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover. And then you be quiet and just let them respond. If you're in your mind saying, well, I'm not going to get the money, I can't ask somebody for $100, you'd be surprised that if they trust you because they've now spoken to you on the phone, you build a little bit of relationship, and they know that your business has a good reputation. I like what they've seen. They've done some more research. They're going to pay every single time. So, like for us and the services that we do, which includes aesthetics, but erectile dysfunction, hormone replacement therapy, some of the higher end cosmetic procedures, my team's job is solely build a relationship, collect their money, deliver the patient to the door. I mean, wouldn't it be really nice if you look at your schedule and you have a bunch of prepaid patients on your schedule, or, as opposed to lots of no shows who could have been filled with people that actually paid. So everything to us is, and it's not just to us, it's not just the mentality of collecting money in sales. We're consultants. We are just helping you along your journey. We understand, you have an issue or you have a challenge, you want to overcome it. We're going to help you. All we ask you to do is pay X amount of dollars up front. And then it's not about arguing with people. It's really about finding solutions. Didn't you really want to lose that, extra fat around the belly? Didn't you really want to get rid of all those wrinkles and what have you? Or you told me how important it is because you have a wedding. Oh yeah. All right, great. So let's get you started. We're going to process your payment for X, and that's it. I mean, we really then we'll rebut, but the people that really aren't serious about it are usually going to be people that don't want to pay up front. Because think about everything you do these days. You go on Amazon, you place an order, they have your credit card already. You're prepaying for your order. Anything, there's a lot of things that you do that you have to prepay before you get there. Same thing with medical. So, and if you want to try it yourself, just take 50 leads and try to collect money from those 50 leads and have a phone script. You don't have to do it for everyone, but then see and say, that's when you can say it works or it doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, typically just means your team needs a little bit more training. And I just want to leave the last thing is you need to train your team. So it has to be daily sales meetings. It has to be your weekly recaps on what's going on, just to make sure everyone understands their position and understands that their job, everybody's job in the practice, is to increase your revenue daily, obviously weekly and monthly.
Yeah, and I think at some point during your career, you've collected $1 million a month.
Yes. Yep.
You know,
We've done, last year we did, a couple $1 million in prepaid sales. I'm sorry, this year, we're right on that cost. So it's because it's our mentality. We started off 3 years ago like this, collecting money up front. I had done this, at another practice prior to that, a big practice. And I took that idea and said, let's roll with this because it's the best way and everyone's happy. I mean, a guy walks in, he's already paid, or a woman walks in, she's already paid. There's really no selling to do. Now it's just building a relationship and upselling them and showing them what other treatments or procedures you have that's going to help them even more. And then once you got them, you got them.
yeah, and just to put this in reference, like major aesthetics clinics like Laser Away, an average typical rep will collect $100,000 a month in revenue. Just one rep out of a call center, out of rows and rows of people. And so, and listen, it's a $29 billion industry. There's a lot that's going to be going on that transactionally wise, which will adapt to, who makes the best decision. And if your company is interested in these topics, necessarily get in touch with us. But again, we'll I think more importantly, let's start to help people and train them. In our next session, we'll get into some more objections, things that we need to help people with. Obviously we're here to help, and we're here to be of value. So those are things we'll get into in the next episode. So thank you, Rich. I'm looking forward to our next podcast, and thank you, listener or watcher, if you are watching this for hanging out with us.